Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at GCNlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set, cocked, locked, blissed? Dr. Shealy, are you blissed?
Yes.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, it's great to hear your voice. I was talking with Andy, our engineer, just before the broadcast. It's always really nice to chat with our engineers, and Andy's a delightful gentleman. And we were just talking about all kinds of things. But just before the broadcast, Dr. Shealy, I called Lou Cassidy, our dear friend and instructor, and I said, I got an idea for what I think is a pretty neat product. And Lou Cassidy, Dr. Shealy, and I can build this thing. And I think it would be something that a lot of people would be interested in. Do you think it's okay if I share it with you in general terms?
Of course.
Okay. So yesterday, I was with one of our instructors, a dentist, Dr. Howard Shane, and he asked me to come on over to his farm and help him. He had some plumbing issues, and he had some issues about some work he had done on a pool. And I've been thinking about this ever since we, finished working on his pool and got his wiring correct and all that for his pool, that what he really needs is an ionizer to add silver and copper into the water of his pool so that they can get away from chlorine. But to do this, I know how to mechanically do it, but it would take a device that would apply the correct amount of current for the amount of water that passes over the cathode and the anode, the copper and silver cathodes and anodes. And it would have to be timed. It would have to be correctly, the voltage and current would have to be reversed every minute or so from positive to negative to positive, back and forth. So you would have equal wear on the cathode and anode, and inject the correct quantity of ions into the water based on the size of the pool. And of course, we'd have to have the electrolyte correct, and we'd have to have a method for measuring the amount of concentration of copper and silver in the water. Now, where you come in is the medical component of that. Does this sound like something that you'd be interested in? I think it would be. Who doesn't want to have, take a bath in silver, a light solution of, we'll call it colloidal silver and copper. Wouldn't that be great?
Well, it sounds interesting to say the least.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So I called Lou and I asked him if he could join us and just discuss it, on the surface, without getting, into all the specific details. And he said that he had to run. He was on his way out, but, he thought it was a pretty cool idea. So maybe you and I and Lou can get on the phone, maybe, one evening when we'll have time and talk about it a little more. But the reason is, I've been learning more and more about how dangerous chlorine is. I mean, I know it's an absolute killer, but it causes circulatory disease.
Well, it's a toss-up between chlorine and fluoride. They're both poison.
So during this summer, people are just going to flock to the pools to go, poison themselves.
Yeah.
I mean, they're right. And this particular pool and it's not the only pool in the country that's like this, but it's an indoor pool. Now, an indoor pool, you've got the chlorine escaping into the air, into a confined room. Even though it's a large room, it's still going into a room with, I would say, not the ventilation that I'd want, because it's a room. Regardless of how many windows it has, they're not enough. It's not like being outside. Even being in a pool outside, I remember when I was younger, in the 60s, getting out of a pool and I'd smell like chlorine, until I took a shower at home. So you bring it with you. And so obviously I've been poisoned many, 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 many times by swimming in a chlorine pool. So the concept I have in mind is pretty simple. It's run a system that would put eliminate chlorine, the need for chlorine, or Bacquicil or any of these other chemical agents, and replace the pool water with a saline solution. And that's, when I say replace, I mean actually just add, maybe 600 pounds of salt to your pool, and you can swim in kind of a saltwater pool and put the ions of copper and silver in there very, very effectively and affordably. And you can eliminate the need for that, $150, $200 worth of chlorine per year, plus, the smell, and the water will be crystal clear, where you can see a dime in the bottom of the 8-foot, pool. And I know the technology works. I've seen it work. And I know how we can make it better. So that was my thought. I just wanted to share that with you. The kind of thing that you never discuss on the air, you never discuss it publicly, but I thought we can do that.
Hey.
Okay, so any comments? Yeah. Okay. Well, Dr. Shealy, I spent some time with some instructors over the weekend, and one of them said that you were on the same flight to the same conference where you were learning about high-frequency, dangerous electromagnetic radiation. Is that right, or am I confused?
Well, yes, that's a whole bunch of things, actually. It was a 4-day workshop.
Okay, and the reason I'm asking is this friend who's in the medical profession was telling me about, there's all these antennas in the house, which are the electrical cords to lamps, the wiring, the smart meters, and she was going on and on about how dangerous all of this is. And I mentioned to her that, Dr. Shealy and I have been talking about that for years. And so she's extremely concerned, as I am. And is there anything that you'd like to share with us that additionally, or for anyone who hasn't heard this, your concerns about high frequencies, electromagnetic radiation, the wiring in your home, and that kind of thing?
Well, it's a toss-up in my mind. I don't like all that electromagnetic stuff, but I think worse than that is the cell phone.
Yeah. And I actually mentioned that. I said, I talked about that last week. And I said the nightmare scenario, I'm paraphrasing, is someone who lives in an apartment complex. So you have a 16-unit apartment complex that has 16 smart meters right outside. And then all of the wiring acts as antennas from behind the smart meters through all these apartment units. And then you have 16 microwave ovens in this building, which would be the 16, and I just picked 16. It could be 8, it could be 40. But so you have 16 microwave ovens all, going on and at breakfast and dinner for sure, sometimes during lunch. And then you have 32 cell phones, because you have probably on average 2 people with cell phones in each apartment unit. So 2 cell phones times 16 units is 32. And then you have each person probably has Wi-Fi, so you have 16 Wi-Fi units blasting all the time. Then you have the computers talking to the Wi-Fi. So you've got the cell phones, the Wi-Fi, the smart meters, the wiring in the units. Plus outside you've got the transformers powering the entire apartment complex, plus whatever smart devices that they have, plus the televisions, and it goes on and on and on. And so I think that the worst scenario that I can think of for most people in most circumstances is living in an apartment complex.
Oh, I agree. As you and I both would say, I think living in a city, I wouldn't even live in Pleasant Hope, which is only 614 people.
Yeah. Yeah, and so to me, it's kind of clear you got to get out of the city. And so I was talking with our friends yesterday at their farm, and they were talking about smart meters. And I said, okay, we have an instructor. His name is James Bertonis, and he lives in California, Silicon Valley. And years and years and years ago, he went on top of the mountain because he designed a system that would allow cable-less cable TV. So instead of having cable, he actually prototyped a system that would transmit from the top of Silicon Valley, California, where I'm talking about Cupertino, Los Gatos, San Jose, those cities. From on top of a mountain, he could transmit television. And all you'd have is this little dish antenna the size of a dinner plate, and you'd aim it at the mountaintop, and you could receive your television. And there's a desktop channel selector, kind of like a control box for cable TV, kind of like that. And this was back in the 1980s. So it was very, very, very early. And so he had this technology, and he went up on top of the mountain with his survey equipment to measure the levels of microwave activity in Silicon Valley down below. And so what he found out was there was this anomaly. There was a peak of electromagnetic radiation, microwave radiation, in Silicon Valley around 8 o'clock in the morning, 7 or 8 o'clock, well, actually like 6 to 8 o'clock in the morning. Then it peaked again around 11, 12, 1 o'clock, around noontime. And then it peaked again around 5, 6, 7 o'clock at night. He thought, what the heck is going on? Why is it peaking? Then he realized very quickly that it was because of the microwave ovens. People were heating their breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and it caused the peak in the microwave radiation across the entire Silicon Valley. I'll tell you a little bit more about that and why this makes sense and how it dovetails with what we're just talking about. Dr. Norm Shealy is with us, normshealy.com. Class, Dr. Norman Shealy is with us. So, Dr. Shealy, yesterday I was at this farm, and it's owned by two dentists, and we were talking about smart meters and how concerned they are about the smart meters. And so we looked at the power poles, and we looked at how electricity comes to their farm, and we looked at their electrical wiring. I spent a lot of time, looking at their wiring at this particular farmhouse. And we're talking about the tri-field meter, and I said, yeah, Dr. Shealy advocates that because, he has one, I have one, and we see the electromagnetic radiation that's dangerous all around us, and when you have one of these, it really wakes you up to it. And so I mentioned the story about Bert Bertonis and how he was surveying how much electromagnetic radiation was on the floor of Silicon Valley, California. And he noticed that it peaked at breakfast, lunch, and dinner time. And then he went back up a couple years later, and he realized that there was no more peaks. The floor, if you will, the low part of the electromagnetic radiation had risen. So the peak was now the floor, meaning the electromagnetic radiation wasn't just highest at breakfast, lunch, and dinner time. It was all day long. And so that the amount of electromagnetic radiation that was in the environment prevented him from doing this technology. And I think that's a good thing that he didn't do it, because we've learned that it's a dangerous technology now. Well, the discussion further went on with my dentist friends and instructors, and we discussed removing one smart meter from their home, which is on a pole. And I said, okay, so that's one, but you're surrounded by them. They're everywhere. So, yeah, it's a great idea to remove one, but that does not eliminate the entire problem because you're surrounded. And that's when I told him the story about Bert Bertonis and what he found out in Silicon Valley. Do you have any comments or thoughts you'd like to share with us regarding that, Dr. Shealy?
Well, it's as if we're gradually being microwaved, isn't it? The whole planet.
Yes. Yes, we are.
And remember, our so-called, whatever those things are up in space, they work within a microwave range as well.
Yes, you're talking about satellites.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so, is second at this point only to the risk of nuclear energy is electromagnetic burn.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So what can... Yeah, I agree. So what, Dr. Shealy, what can we do? Do you have any thoughts of protecting ourselves from the electromagnetic radiation? I know if you go outside, I guess that's where the tinfoil hat description comes in for us because we're afraid of electromagnetic radiation. Well, the tinfoil hats are right. I mean, that really is right. As a matter of fact, I was thinking about, when I'm in my car, I have a Luftwaffe helmet from World War II. It's a Nazi helmet, but it has better coverage than any other helmet because it covers my ears. Now, I just have one as a historical artifact, but honest to God, I've been thinking I need to wear that when, to protect my brain against police radar. I'm darn serious about this. But what can we do, Dr. Shealy, in our homes? Do you have any thoughts?
Well, you could build a Faraday cage around your house.
Okay.
Actually, it wouldn't be that expensive if you didn't mind the look of it, because it's all you need is copper wire.
Mm-hmm.
You can build a frame with copper wire around the entire house and ground it.
Mm-hmm.
That will not allow any radio waves, et cetera, to go through.
Yeah, and so the Civic Association and the aesthetic police would come over and say, "What are you doing?" Well, I checked out the covenants and deed restrictions here at the house, and I don't see anything about Faraday cages.
Right.
Well, Dr. Shealy, I'd like to share with you. I don't know if I've ever told you this, but when we come back, I built a partial Faraday cage or cages in our farmhouse, and you've been here, and I'll tell you exactly what I did, and I'd love to hear your comments about the approach that I took 13 years ago to minimize the electromagnetic radiation from our home wiring. And this is something that anybody can do. We'll be right back. Class Dr. Norman Shealy is with us, and we're talking about electromagnetic radiation and some of the dangers and ways to mitigate those electromagnetic fields. So Dr. Shealy has a tri-field meter, and it's spelled TRIFIELD, and then the word meter. And the model I have, and I believe, Dr. Shealy, you have the same one, is Model 100XE. And it has a rotary knob, which lets you test magnetic ranges and radio and microwave ranges, and has a standard meter dial face, if you will. It's not digital display. It's an analog style, handheld, battery powered meter. And so I just used it to measure the electromagnetic fields coming out of our house wiring during the commercial break. And here's what I found. And I know this. I've done this many, many times. The wiring in the house, if you do not energize that circuit, there is no measurable electromagnetic radiation or fields. Now, here's what I'm saying. So let's say you have a circuit on your circuit breaker panel, and we'll call it dining room. Okay? And so that whole circuit is nothing but the dining room. And if you go and you try to measure the electromagnetic radiation against where the wires are in the wall, you won't find any. unless there is a device plugged in to that particular circuit. Now, if there is a device using electricity, let's say it's a lamp, let's say it's a radio, let's say it's a wall charger, on that circuit, that wiring will start becoming an antenna and will start transmitting electromagnetic radiation. But if you're not using it, it doesn't transmit electromagnetic radiation. The problem is when you use, who doesn't use their house wiring? You've got a refrigerator hooked up, right? You've got lights hooked up. So, I mean, that's why you have the wiring, so you can use it. But the darn thing, that darn system is dangerous. Well, here's what I did to minimize that. So, Dr. Shealy, this was 13 years ago when we were building our house. I went to eBay and I bought some copper dust. And I bought 5 pounds of, it looks like, or the consistency of white bread flour. It's really fine. It's not gritty. It's really, really fine. And so I bought 5 pounds of that and had it shipped here. And I mixed it with the primer of the paint that we use to paint the walls. Now, I know where the wiring is in our house because I wired our house with our son. And I took pictures and I used standards. So, for example, I got a stick and I measured 18 inches from, or 24 inches from the floor, or 18 inches from the floor, or 48 inches from the floor, and 12 inches from the floor. So I knew how high the wires would be run horizontally from outlet to outlet to outlet. And the code, the National Electric Code, says that you will have outlets no farther apart than 6 feet. So there's lots of, receptacles or outlets and switches. I mean, just like it meets all the standards, but there's lots of them. Well, I painted the walls with this copper dust mixed with the primer 2 feet on either side of the wiring. So my thought was that I would reflect back into the wall the electromagnetic radiation coming out from the wiring. Now, the reason I didn't paint the whole wall is because distance is your friend and the electromagnetic radiation drops off over distance. So that's what I did to help minimize the electromagnetic radiation. Do you have any thoughts or comments about that?
Well, it sounds brilliant. How much did it cut it down?
Quite significantly. And now I didn't do this as a scientific experiment. I wish I had. I wish I bought copper dust and aluminum dust and iron dust, and maybe nickel to see what the differences would be. But I didn't. I said, well, copper. Now, when you do that, it oxidizes really quickly. So if you use white primer, it's like green because we'll call it rust. So the copper rusts instantly, when you mix it with the primer. So you can see that it's in there, but you have to keep stirring it because it settles to the bottom. It's way heavier than any other component of the paint. So you have to keep, stirring it. But what I'm saying is I believe this is an inexpensive retrofit that anybody can do, especially if they're going to be painting. Now, are there areas that you would recommend a person start with if what are the most dangerous areas of the person's house? Do you have a feel for that, Dr. Shealy, that they should, try minimizing the electromagnetic radiation?
The kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
I would think the kitchen is worse.
Yeah.
Because, so many.
Well, that's a very good point. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Who goes into the kitchen without turning the lights on, right? There's, and here's an example. So we have this coffee maker. I'm not saying we, but people have coffee makers, and they've got timers on them. So if you want, you can hit those buttons, and you can say, okay, well, I'd like my coffee to start percolating at 6 a.m. So at night before, you can add the water, you can add the coffee grounds, you can close it all up, hit the program button and say, okay, 6 a.m. tomorrow morning, start making the coffee, so the coffee's ready for me. But what that does is that energizes that circuit. And now that whole circuit of wires inside the wall all the way from the breaker panel to that outlet is now an antenna. It's now transmitting. Or you have one of those little General Electric clocks like we used to have, like a tabletop clock the size of a coffee cup, if you will. And, it's just sitting there telling you the time. Well, that energizes that circuit as well. So all of these little devices that you have and you're not thinking about, even your television, if your television is off, you hit that remote and you go off. I don't want to see it. It doesn't mean it's off. That television is still on. How do you know? Well, it has to be on because if you hit that remote, if you hit that remote button, I'm sorry, please say that again, Dr. Shealy?
Up to 10 feet away, you can read the output from the television up to 10 feet from the front, even when it's turned off.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Now, if we extrapolate this out, back when we used to have cathode ray tube computer monitors, those big monitors, not the flat ones that we have now, but the big cathode ray tubes. They were the same cathode ray tubes that we had in televisions, both black and white and color televisions. Well, I'm going to tell you a real short story about how far those electromagnetic waves travel. Now, when I was in banking, they said, clear off your desk because this weekend, this was on a Friday, okay, boys and girls, clean off your desks, put everything away because on Friday the painters are coming and they, over the weekend, and they're going to paint the file cabinets. And you don't need to empty them out. We're just going to paint the outside so they all have the same color. They're all going to be like this ivory tan color. So whatever color they were, they're all going to be ivory and tan because we want it to look nice. All right, so, turn off your computers and everything will be fine. So we all turned off our computer monitors, unplugged everything. One guy didn't do it. And they were using electrostatic spraying. And what they would do is attach a wire with a clip, a clamp to the file cabinet, and then they would spray paint it. What would happen is the spray wouldn't go all over the room. It would just go, they'd have to put a drop cloth under the file cabinet. But when they sprayed it, the paint would travel right from the spray gun right to that metal file cabinet or that metal desk or that metal whatever it was. It would stick, and it wouldn't go flying around the room. One guy left his monitor on across the room. Now, when I say across the room, this is like a room where hundreds of people work. So it was probably 100 feet away, at least, this monitor. Well, this monitor was covered with paint. So the electromagnetic radiation from the monitor was strong enough to pull paint 100 feet through the air and cover the screen, the plastic, everything of this monitor. That's what we're talking about. So now, how many of us have devices in our home? We didn't even think about it, right? We got routers, got the microwave ovens. Wow. And some people, Dr. Shealy, I have seen people look in a microwave oven. They're cooking something for a minute, and they stick their face right up against the window to see how it's doing. I can't believe it.
Well, believe it. Unfortunately, when you consider the fact that only 2.7% of people have the basic essential habits for being healthy, it means that 97.3% of people are stupid.
Yeah, I'm afraid you're right, and I'm afraid they get to vote.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. So I wanted to tell you, do you have any other comments before I go into the next topic?
Well, it's a very important topic, and I don't know the answer. We can't live in a cave very easily.
Right. Well, they've made it very difficult. So over the weekend, actually it was Friday, I went to an antique tractor event and antique farm equipment event. Actually, I was the only guy there. Actually, it was me. It was me on my antique tractor going around in circles. And I have this roller And there actually, believe it or not, there's a medical reason why I'm describing all this. I think there is a metaphor here, or an analogy. So I have this roller, and in our neck of the woods, rocks seem to just magically appear. After the winter, rocks just pop out of the ground, and these are rocks the size of softballs or larger. And I've got this roller that I roll the fields with, and it just pushes them back down. It's like whack-a-mole. But I'll tell you a little bit more about this, and this does have a medical relationship. We'll be right back. So we have these fields on our farm, and thousands and thousands of rocks appear after the winter. And if you go to any farm around here, you'll see rock piles everywhere. Dr. Shealy, do you have a rock pile at your farm too?
That's really interesting, Vince. No, we don't have that happen.
Well, here's what I've been to your farm, and I'm thinking, gosh, how do you manicure these fields? How come they're smooth and level and all around, well, we're about 60 miles apart, maybe 70, and everybody here's got rocks everywhere. I mean, with a little dirt. We got mostly rocks and a little bit of dirt. But so all around here, if you come here, you'll see rock piles. People they pile up their rocks. They build a great big cylindrical fence with fence wire, woven wire, let's say 5 feet in diameter. And they put that on the corner of their property, and they just fill that with rocks. And then, so now you have a rock cylinder filled with rocks held in by the fence wire, like a fabric wire. And then that's the corner of their fence, because that's not moving. It weighs tons and tons. So you see them everywhere around here. And so what we've done is we have a roller. We've taken there's an old propane tank, which probably weighs 1,000 pounds. And it has an axle through it. And then we have a fill cap, and we can fill it with water, and there's a frame that we can pull it behind the tractor. So now the whole thing weighs thousands of pounds, and we just slowly drive the tractor and pull this roller, which is a propane tank, rolling across the field. And whenever it finds a rock, when the ground is moist and soft, we can just push the rocks back in. If there's a drought, there's no way we're going to do anything to those rocks. But so I've been going around and around and around, pushing these rocks back into the field, so I don't hit them with the mower when we cut hay. But there's a reason why I'm telling you all this, because there's a medical reason. So when I was going around pushing these rocks in, I was annoyed because the fuel injection pump on our 1974 tractor, which is an antique, 44 years old, is leaking. And our 1984 tractor's fuel injection pumps are leaking. These fuel injection pumps are really expensive. They're about $1,000 if you put it in yourself, each. And I'm annoyed. Now, why is that? Because the government has mandated that we take sulfur out of the diesel fuel. Well, the sulfur is the lubricant for the fuel injection pumps. So it causes them to wear out really quickly. And I've replaced many of these on vehicles because they've worn out. That's part number one. Part number two is gasoline used to have lead in it. And the lead, of course, is dangerous, but that was the lubrication for the valves of gasoline-powered engines. And when you take the lead out, the valves burn and fail quickly. Sometimes they break off and bang holes through the tops of pistons, causing catastrophic engine failure. So now we're looking at lots and lots of damage caused by what used to be additives in the fuel, the gasoline with the lead and the sulfur in the diesel fuel that let the engines run, efficiently. Now, not great for breathing, but it was certainly better for the engines. Then the EPA said you will take zinc and phosphorus out of engine oil, which is required for the older engines to operate because it provides extreme pressure lubrication for the camshaft and the valve lifters. So we've had, if you're wondering why we have so few old vehicles running around, is because the lack of additives in the oil, the lack of sulfur in the diesel fuel, and the lack of lead in the gasoline has destroyed a lot of these engines. Now, how does that relate to health? Well, people are sick, and So my question is, if that is the analogy, we've taken the additives, the requirements for these machines to run well, if we've taken them out and it's caused catastrophic failures of these machines, these engines, diesel and gasoline, what about the requirements that people need in their fuel that we've taken out? Is there such a thing? Have we reduced the amount of additives like vitamins, minerals, supplements in our food, the nutrition, so that our engines run well? Can we talk about that when we come back, Dr. Shealy?
You bet.
Does that analogy make sense?
Oh, you bet. Excellent.
Okay.
You're on a roll.
We'll be right back. Dr. Norm Shealy's with us. NormShealy.com. We'll be right back. Everyone all set, cocked, locked? Hour number 2 of USA Prepares. And the call screen is up. If you'd like to call us, we'd love to hear from you. 866-582-9933. 866-582-9933. And the telephone listen line is 605-477-3249. 605-477-3249. Dr. Shealy's with us. And during hour number 1, I was talking about a scenario where diesel fuel had it originally had 500 parts per million of sulfur added to it or in it, and it was reduced to 15 parts per million, from 50,000 down to 15 parts per million, and it caused the diesel fuel injection pumps to fail. The zinc and phosphorus was removed from engine oil, and it causes the older engines to fail. Camshaft failures, catastrophic failures. And we talked about the lead being removed from gasoline, and that caused the valves to burn up on the older engines, causing them to have catastrophic failure as well. And so the question was, is there a similarity in what has happened to us in our fuel? Have there been any subtractions, changes that are causing us to wear out and have catastrophic failures in our bodies? Dr. Shealy, your thoughts? Do we have Dr. Shealy? I don't hear him. So, John, are we connected? Let me check my other screen here. And it says we're connected, but I don't hear Dr. Shealy. Well, what would you like to do? John, are you there? Just me?
I'll call back.
Oh, we got you. We got you, Dr. Shealy. Did we just lose Dr. Shealy? He's going to call back? Okay, so he's going to call us back. So does this happen very often? Where an instructor is lost? Does it happen with other shows, or is it just happening with us? That's the question. Okay. Well, on Friday, I'm going to be doing another broadcast, part 3, on generators. And I've been spending some time on generators, and I found something very interesting. So we do have Norm Shealy? Yes? Okay.
Hello?
Dr. Shealy, welcome back.
Oh, good. Where were you?
Do we have you, Dr. Shealy?
I'm sorry?
Wow. That's pretty interesting radio. It's just me looking for Dr. Shealy and John trying to find him. So, John, what is the status? Do we have Dr. Shealy?
Can you hear me? I can hear you.
I don't know. So, I'm looking at, we do?
Hello?
Hey, Dr. Shealy, glad you're here. So, we were talking about, hour number 1, we were talking about, the diesel fuel missing the additives, gasoline missing the additives, the catastrophic failures to the engines. that the removal of these supplements has caused. Is there an analogy to the body?
Absolutely. Way back in the 70s, Rothschild Hall wrote a wonderful book called Food for Naught. He pointed out, we're talking about over 50 years ago, that the food in the grocery stores was highly deficient in vitamins and minerals because of all kinds of soil practices. It includes nitrate fertilizers, of course, and it also includes the fact that there's magnesium missing in the soil. And although cattle farmers have to add magnesium to keep their beef alive, the vegetable and fruit farmers do not add magnesium to the soil. Then when you copy that with Roundup, and, the biggest thing, Vince, is Roundup is not only the most poison thing ever released in the world, but it rains. 65% of rain across the country is filled with Roundup. Other than that, Mrs. Lincoln, the play goes on.
You're mentioning magnesium, and one of the things this is kind of interesting. There's a rock quarry, a limestone rock quarry, about 40 miles from us, and that's where I've been buying our limestone for our driveway. Well, I've been trying for years and years to get anyone to spread lime on our fields. Bring a truck with a spreader and put tons and tons and tons of lime on our fields, and I've been unable to do it. So I'm looking out the studio window at another antique. I bought a 1985 International Harvester truck, and it's a big truck. It's like the size of the largest U-Haul they make. I mean, it's that big. And on the back of it, it has a spreader that was, I believe, used for spreading salt on the roads. So we're going to make this operational and use it to spread lime. And one of the things that I wanted to do, and you just mentioned it, Dr. Shealy, but hardly any farmers do it, is we want to spread limestone with a high magnesium content on our fields. What are your thoughts about, using the high magnesium rather than the low magnesium limestone?
Oh, obviously. It's interesting that apparently this is part of the reason for global weather change, because the plants are not getting enough minerals in general, but magnesium in particular, and so they're not as hardy as they used to be 1,000 years ago.
Mm-hmm. I can tell you I'm not as hardy as I used to be if I don't use magnesium lotion. No, I'm serious about this. If I don't apply magnesium lotion or magnesium spray to my body every day, my heart does not work as well. I have no problems with it at all, when I use magnesium. But I can tell you that when I become magnesium deficient, I get an irregular heartbeat. Is that unusual, Dr. Shealy, or are you finding that more common?
Extremely common. With people who have auricular fibrillation and atrial fibrillation and irregular heartbeat, almost inevitably they're deficient in magnesium. In fact, 80% of people, if you measure the intracellular magnesium, because remember, the majority of magnesium in your body is not running around in the blood, is inside the cells, and it is highly deficient across the board. Now, I've been using the magnesium lotion for well over 20 years, and so I never miss a day.
Dr. Shealy, I believe that I'm the only patient of my internist at the hospital medical practice that uses magnesium as a supplement. I believe I'm the only person who applies it to his skin that they know of. And to me, it absolutely positively works. And the way you find out is stop using it, and wow, you realize how much it works. So
absolutely,
that's my thought. Sharon in Montana. Montana, welcome. You're on with Dr. Shealy.
Good morning. I'm apologizing because I'd like to jump back quite a ways back. I had to go out and do chores because I have a meeting I have to go to in a little bit. You were talking about disinfecting pools, and I was wondering, wouldn't that Nixol stuff help with that? You used to sell that Nixol or whatever.
Well, Nixol
that's a question for Dr. Shealy.
Yeah, Nixol is a weak form of chlorine. it's much safer than regular bleach, but it still is chlorine.
Oh, okay. And secondly, couldn't you maybe put colloidal silver in the water? I mean, my husband makes colloidal silver, and once you have this stuff, it's fairly inexpensive to make. Wouldn't be inexpensive to buy, but if you made it, wouldn't that possibly work the same?
Sharon, that's exactly what we're talking about. That's it.
Yeah, no question.
We're talking about putting colloidal silver in the water.
Okay.
Yeah.
But like I said, I had to
Dr.
bow
Shealy?
out to go do chores, but I was just thinking that, to me, I'm using it in my chicks, and I haven't lost a single chick yet. And we've used it for our various animals and even ourselves, but it seems like it works pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
No question. Silver is
Sharon, to
chlorine.
Okay. Yeah, I was just curious. I mean,
Sharon, to answer your question.
Uh-huh.
To answer your question, I have a huge delay here. It's over 2 seconds, so that's why you hear me stepping on you guys on the air. I'm going to have to reconnect and see if I can slow this delay down. But what we're talking about is your husband Kyle making colloidal silver, in a small way. I'm saying whatever the container he's using, let's say it's a small beaker or a glass or a jar, we're going to increase that to a swimming pool.
Mm-hmm.
That's exactly what we're talking about. We're talking about making colloidal silver to swim in.
Well, it's pretty concentrated. He makes it by the quart, and you don't need to put very much in. So I think if you had a quart, you'd almost probably do the pool because, it disperses among all the water.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And because we have this stuff, it's not that expensive to make.
Right. Well, but you will, if you use silver wire, and a 9-volt battery or, small DC power source, is that how you do it?
It's not a 9-volt. It's a batteries with like 6 of them or something all put together. Big, those.
Okay.
Big
Yeah, sure.
I don't know what voltage they are.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're talking about that, but the amount of silver that you use would nowhere be sufficient to do 20,000, 30,000 gallons. It's just not enough. But and also, you need to change the electrolyte from being distilled water to being a slightly saline solution. A little less salty than tears. But the net benefit is when you jump in this pool, your eyes won't burn. Your eyes won't burn because it's not chlorine. It's a saline solution similar to tears, but at a weaker concentration of salt. It's pretty impressive. Dr. Shealy's with us. Sharon in Montana's with us. Sharon's an instructor at USA Prepares. Sharon, your idea is absolutely correct. Taking a colloidal silver generator and adding it to a pool. So, yes, you can do it exactly the way you're saying. Generate the colloidal silver, in a smaller container and pour it into the pool. Or you can have a system that will continuously generate colloidal silver in your pool electronically with bigger cathodes and anodes. And that's what I'm talking about. Kind of an automatic system that would just continuously generate the systems in a very, very safe way, where you can control electronically the amount of current that's being applied to generate the necessary concentration of colloidal silver. That's what I was talking about.
Okay. I was going to, kind of unrelated when we're talking about colloidal silver, I was going to tell you, though, it works awfully well on pink eye. My daughters, way back when they were doing sports, got pink eye, and they just put some drops in their eyes, and it went away. And then just recently, my little granddaughters are in preschool and kindergarten, and they both had a bout, and by taking them home at night, putting it at night, one day at home, and the next night, and the next morning, they were able to go back to school. So it's a lot less toxic and less expensive, I would say, rather than a doctor visit. Solution to get rid of pink eye. The other thing I was just going to ask, too, because Kyle mentioned it, he said, how would hydrogen peroxide work in the water to disinfect it?
Well, let's ask Dr. Shealy. It certainly is a disinfectant. Dr. Shealy, what do you think about hydrogen peroxide?
Well, I don't know how much it would take. I think it would take a rather huge amount to do, a swimming pool.
Yeah.
So for a glass of water, yes, it could work. But I don't know about it for a bigger region. Just cost-wise.
And also it volatilizes. So, it's not you don't add it and you have a permanent fix. You add it, and, it dissipates just like chlorine does. But the colloidal silver, that's a whole different animal, because that stays in the water until it precipitates out. So it's there until you over concentrate the silver in the water. And I got to tell you that I built one years ago for our swimming pool in Virginia, and you could see whether a dime was heads or tails in the 8-foot section. It is absolutely unbelievable, and it really does work. And I'm thinking that we could build this very, very inexpensively, and yet have it accurately deliver the concentration that we're looking for. And it's so hard to explain what it's like jumping into a swimming pool that you've added, let's say, 300, 400, 500, or 600 pounds of salt into. And I'm talking about, these bags of salt that are the size of dog food bags, and you just open it up and you pour it in the pool and you go, wow, it's going to be terrible. And then you taste the water and you go, I don't taste it at all. So you add your next 50 pounds. I don't taste it at all. And when you get to the 6th bag, you just might taste a hint of salt. Just might. Not really likely, but you might. And that's how much salt you'd be putting in, and that would cause the ions to enter the pool as the saline solution, as the electrolyte. But swimming in salt water is so much nicer. It really is, even though you don't know it's salty. And in our pool, no one ever said, what's different about your water? There was the absence of the chlorine smell, and when they swam underwater with their eyes open, it didn't burn like chlorine. And it didn't turn their hair orange either. So those are a few of the benefits.
I'd forgotten about the orange hair.
Yeah. So this is a pretty neat thing we're talking about. And I believe that Dr. Shealy, Lou Cassidy, and I can build this. And I believe it'll be, it's improving on an existing technology. And Dr. Shealy would make sure that we got the concentrations right. Lou would make sure that we got the electronics right to deliver the concentrations. And I'd make sure that the mechanics all work. So that's what we're talking about, if we decide to collaborate on this. And so I sprung this on Dr. Shealy. It was a complete surprise. Sharon, would you like to continue with us?
No, I'll bow out. Thank you very much.
Okay. Hey, give my best to your roommate.
Okay.
Nice. That's her husband. I refer to him as her roommate. We'll be right back. Norm Shealy. Dr. Norman Shealy is with us. Dr. Shealy, I don't know if you had a chance to listen to the commercials during that break, but did you hear the one about the pizza and the sense of urgency, and we want pizza, tonight? Did you hear that?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that gentleman, the voice of that commercial, his name is Ron Allen. And Ron Allen is the same gentleman who did, and now Vincent Finelli. Well, he's the guy. So I just, I got such a chuckle out of that latest advertisement of his. I called him up and I said, hey, Ron, Vin Finelli. He said, hey, I said, will you come on the air and talk about advertising with me and how commercials work and all that? And he said, yeah, it'd be great. So in a couple of weeks, Ron Allen is going to be on, and he's the voice, the big voice that did our introductions. Well, Dr. Shealy, is a kind of funny story about that. So that used to play on the radio station in Springfield, Missouri. And so I went to a meetup and I met this new gal, and she looked at me. She, I'm paraphrasing and making this a little more animated. But, the first time this woman met me, she was a middle-aged gal. She put her hands on her hips and she said, you're Vincent Finelli? And I said, well, I used to be a lot taller, before I started radio. And she was expecting, this 300-pound, 6'8" guy, based on Ron Helland's introduction to the broadcast. It's like, really? You're Vin Finelli? I was expecting somebody a little different. You mean like taller? So class, I'm 140. I used to be 138. 140 pounds, 5'7". So that's Vin Finelli. But that doesn't mean I have to back down.
Vince, that's interesting. You know what I am? 134.
Yep.
And
so we're about the same size. Yeah.
Yep.
Dr. Shealy and I are about the same size. Yeah. And so, we're talking about health and nutrition. And did you have any more that you'd like to share with us about that? Because Dr. Shealy, frankly, I'm seeing people who are very, very sick. I'm seeing a couple things that I don't like. Number one, people are getting sicker. And two, people could do more to reverse their maladies, and they're not doing it. I mean, I've said to people, I'll tell you what, Dr. Shealy's going to be on the air with me on Monday. Why don't you call in and get some expert medical advice? It's absolutely free. We'll give you as much time as you need. He will answer all your questions, and you'll get another opinion or an opinion, and you can take control. Well, yeah, we'll see.
We're overwhelmed with calls.
Well, and these aren't things that I'm talking about serious problems. I'm talking about cancers. I'm talking about tumors. I'm talking about diabetes. And it's almost impossible for us to get people who are really sick to call in and ask for an advice or an opinion, even though it doesn't cost anything. I don't understand it. I really don't. But now, on your show in Springfield, Missouri, last time I was in the studio watching you broadcast, you just basically say, I'm Dr. Shealy, I'm on the air, you can be too, and Jane, you're on, and boom, like 22 calls in an hour, right?
Yeah, well, that call has been around for 30 years, and it is the KTXR station, so people are accustomed to me. Interesting, though, I only get about one frequent caller a week, so they are new people.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's wonderful. And let me ask you this: what are they asking? Can you share that with us? I don't mean to be personal about their health problems, but what are their questions generally? What topics?
Cholesterol and high blood pressure are probably the two most common, followed by depression and anxiety, and then pain. Mm-hmm. So, it's really a cross-section of the most common diseases.
Okay, when you say, okay.
Well, I was going to say, the antidote for most people is, the average person consumes 2.2 servings of fruits and vegetables a day. Mm-hmm. I get 8 to 10 or 12. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure you do too.
Yeah.
And when that's the best source for the best part of nutrition is, I'm okay about meat and cheese and all those other things, but you must have fruits and vegetables because that's where you get your antioxidants.
Okay. Let me describe a typical lunch that I'll consume, and I'd like to get your opinion. So I will take some lettuce, and I'll individually wash each leaf to make sure that, there are no bugs or spider webs or whatever might be on it, residue of pesticides. And then I will tear them. Of course, I wash my hands really well first. Then I tear the lettuce into small bite-sized pieces, and I'll put it in like a Tupperware container that has a lid. And so I'll tear off all the lettuce and then soak it in water, put the lid on this Tupperware-style container, and then shake it up, let it set for a few minutes, then pour off the water. Then refill the water, let it set for a couple minutes, shake it, pour off the water, and I'll rinse it 3, 4, 5 times. Then after I've drained the water, I will add a salad dressing. Typically, it will be extra virgin olive oil with apple cider vinegar with mother, maybe a little bit of pink Himalayan salt, some pepper, and I'll put all that into the Tupperware style container, shake it up, and let it set for several minutes. I might put it in the refrigerator for a little bit and then take it out, and then I'll put it on a plate and add cottage cheese. And that's it. What is your reaction to that? Is that healthy, or is there something I can do better?
Very, very, very. Very, okay. Very.
Right. And when I have that, Dr. Shealy, if I do that 3, 4, 5, 6 days, and I do it now, it's all the time. It's like a regular thing. I feel so much better. And then if you add that to, you were talking about this vibrating kind of a mat you can stand on. I think John Regan likes that concept. He might even have one. I don't have one, but I have a tractor that vibrates. And
well, you're getting lots of movement on and off the tractor as well as up and down.
I am, and it has Armstrong steering. That's my dad's term for no power steering. You got to have strong arms to turn that heavy steering wheel because it's all manual. So it's got Armstrong brakes and Armstrong steering, and you bounce around. And I've got to tell you that I feel so much better now that the weather is warm enough for me to get out an open frame tractor where I'm not, in air conditioning and sunshade. And so I got the sun on me. It's not too hot. I'm going round and round in circles, bouncing around. It's great. It really is. So I just wanted to share with you that the thought about that mat that you're talking about that vibrates. Well, I've tried that in a different way with the tractor. And I believe that the improvement in the circulation, the respiration, helps me cough up phlegm. It's unbelievable. It really is. So there's a lot to everything you say. And by the way, Dr. Shealy, in the going on, 7 years of broadcasting we've been doing together, not one thing you said has been wrong. Not one. Not one. Let me say it a different way. Not one thing you said is wrong. Not one.
My latest thought is, Vince, about hypothyroidism. 80% of people are hypothyroid. Unfortunately, because the blood tests do not differentiate between fluoride and iodine on the tyrosine molecule, the blood tests often turn out to be normal. There's only one accurate way to test whether or not you're hypothyroid. Your oral temperature when you've been out of bed at least 3 hours. If it's not 98.6, you are hypothyroid. And the biggest reason for that is fluoridated water. I cannot get over how people just refuse to get rid of that junk, that poison in their city water.
All right. Well, let's extrapolate for just a couple of minutes on exactly what you've just said. So there are two things that people do that I think, based on what you said, could contribute to poor health. One, of course, is the fluoride in the water at their home. So if they go out to eat, they're going to get fluoride in the cooking at the restaurant. If they have a glass of soda, it's going to be fluoride in the fountain mixer that mixes the soda with the city water or the municipal water, right? Isn't that going to happen, Dr. Shealy?
Oh, of course. And don't forget, if they're drinking it out of an aluminum can, they're getting aluminum poisoning.
Okay. So if they go to the restaurant and they say, well, I'll have that cookie with, for dessert. That cookie was almost certainly baked on an aluminum cookie sheet. Almost certainly. Right?
I even forgot to exist. I haven't had such thing in my house in 40 years.
Well, we probably have about 10 of them here at the farm, but they're restaurant size or the bakery size. And I bought them used for the farm. So if I've got a tractor that, is dripping a fluid, I put one of those it's actually a cookie pan, maybe a 1 inch high rim around it. It's large, maybe 24 inches by 30 inches, something like that. It's pretty big. And so we use them for that. And for the dog food, instead of putting the dog food on the concrete floor in the garage, we put it on a cookie sheet to, not the dog food itself, but the bag that the dog food is in, so it doesn't conduct moisture through the concrete floor. So we use them for farm purposes, but we don't bake with them. We don't cook with them. But if you go to a restaurant, I'm pretty sure that there's aluminum in a lot of the cooking utensils that they use.
Oh, and aluminum foil, even.
Right.
You know, baked potatoes in aluminum foil. Aluminum is poison.
Mm-hmm. So the next question is, if a person goes to a restaurant a lot, would that person generally be healthier or less healthy than eating at home and being really careful about aluminum, fluoride, and those things? And then let's talk about beer and fluoride. So those are the questions that we have when we come back. Dr. Shealy's with us. NormShealy.com. Class Dr. Norman Shealy's with us, and if you'd like to go to his website, if you'd like to sign up for the free newsletter, NormShealy.com, NormShealy.com. Dr. Shealy, if any of our class would like to contact you and set up an appointment and come see you in person, what's the best way to do that?
Well, the best is to call 417-351-5221 because I try never to do the scheduling myself because I could double schedule and forget about it.
I've done that. I've double booked for the radio broadcast. Oops. Every once in a while. I mean, it doesn't happen too often, but yeah, I understand. So, Dr. Shealy, restaurant versus home cooking. If a person is conscientious, is careful, reads the labels, and those kinds of things, uses filtered water, is really, really careful about what he or she consumes, compared to the person that goes and eats that gourmet, delightful looking, delightful tasting restaurant food, who's going to live longer?
Well, the natural home food, of course. I would say the difference would be somewhere about 15 to 20 years in life expectancy and an equal number of health years.
Wow.
In other words,
that's a huge...
restaurant food is almost as bad as smoking.
You know, and when that sweet gal comes around and says, "So, how does it taste? Does it taste great?" Well, it's been engineered to taste great. I mean, how can you say no? How can you say? I mean, literally, it's been engineered. Just like tobacco was engineered to keep you hooked. It wasn't designed to make you healthier. Okay, so then we go to beer. I don't drink a lot of beer, but sometimes I'll have one, or actually I'll split one with Mrs. Finelli. And but beer, if it's brewed in a city, don't they use municipal water that is the same tap water that, maybe they filter it, but doesn't it have fluoride in it?
You bet. And if it's in an aluminum can, the beer is highly reactive to aluminum, and so you're gonna get a triple dose of aluminum as well. Don't ever drink beer out of a can, only out of a bottle.
I mentioned what you said to the family. I called a family meeting, and I said, "Okay, gang, just want to let you know, Dr. Shealy," and this was several weeks ago, Dr. Shealy and I talked about aluminum and aluminum toxicity. So there will be no more cans of aluminum anything here at the farm. None. No more cans. Now,
I threw out 40 cans of ginger beer this weekend because I'll never drink it again.
Mm-hmm. And that's your favorite, right?
Oh, yeah. Triple strength. Ginger.
So okay, so for those of us who, once in a while want to have a beer, and I'm not talking about, having a six-pack and watching a bunch of guys with short pants go chasing a ball on television. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about, I'm talking about, if you just want to have a small amount of beer, and if a person does that, do we have to brew our own now to get it so that it's safe? Or is there a beer that...
I mean, well, of course, if you don't drink very much of it, out of a bottle, I guess it's okay. I would say 1 a week.
Okay.
But more than that, you're getting extra fluoride even out of a bottle.
All right. And do you have, now that you've determined that the ginger beer that you had been buying was toxic because of the aluminum leaching into the beer and poisoning you, have you found a replacement beer that you found is acceptable? Is there a brand that you like?
Well, all of them are fair, but on a scale of 0 to 10, they're about a 5 instead of a 10.
Okay, but no matter what, no aluminum.
Right.
No aluminum. Okay, Dr. Shealy, thank you so much. Will I be seeing you next week?
You bet, every week.
Okay, sounds great. Yeah, normshealy.com, class. And if you want that number to set up an appointment to chat with him or go see him, 417-351-5221. 417-351-5221. And that's where I get the youth formula and the supplements from Dr. Shealy. Above all, honesty and integrity. What happens next is up to you.